Hello, friend, and welcome back to episode number 2 of my new 31-day series answering your questions on how to create a career or a business that you love. And in today's episode, I'm going to be tackling quite an important subject. It comes from a question that starts like in quite a disheartened way, but actually at the core of it, what the question really was about is how do you find the right clients for you? So I'm going to be diving into that in this episode. If you've got your own questions, then make sure to reach out to me. You can get me on social media, Alex Makes VR across all of them, or you can send, if you've got a slightly longer question, send me an email at alexmakesvr@gmail.com. I've also set up, and you'll have to bear with me because I'm super new to the newsletter world, but I've set up a newsletter so that you can be reminded when the podcast goes live, and also including just a short summary of what is being discussed in that episode, just so you know whether it's of interest to you. So if you want to sign up for that, that is alexmakesvr.com. Okay, so let's dive right in. So this question, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase here because this was a bit of a back and forth with me and this particular person, and I do have a bit more context on where they're at, but I wanted to make this super applicable to all of you listening. So the context really is that he has been going out and trying to kind of like sell virtual tours specifically to the events industry, and his message reads, part of it reads, "I'm currently becoming disheartened by the lack of positive leads I'm getting. It's making me question whether there's really a market for this product. And I wonder whether my experience is due to the recent pandemic or whether it's just a really difficult time to start a virtual tours company right now." So there are a few elements that I want to talk about here. And ultimately, at the heart of this is, are you going after the right kind of clients? Now, right now is a particularly strange time. I know that people keep flogging this word to death, but we really are living through unprecedented times. And therefore, you can't even really look at the way that companies generally react to things like recessions, because this is so much more than a recession. This has literally never happened in the last however many decades. Like the last time this happened was like 100 years ago or something. So it's not just like a financial problem. Obviously, we've got freedom of movement being restricted. We've got there's so much going on. Having said that, there is still, if you are having a lot of rejections at the moment, or if you're reaching out and you're not even hearing back from people, I want you to not feel disheartened. I want you to flip the switch and think about it from that person's point of view, because everyone is suffering right now. And the number one piece of advice I can give you when you're going after new clients, especially during this time, but this applies in general, is you have to lead with empathy. You have to kind of put yourself in that person's shoes. Now, the number one thing that I kind of gathered from this question, the key points were that he was specifically going after events companies. Now, the logic behind that is totally sound. I think we can all agree that virtual reality and, 360 will absolutely, and in some areas already is, it will transform the events business. Especially now during these times that we're kind of getting used to doing everything remotely, right? And actually the idea of having to fly across the world and spend out all that money on plane tickets and accommodation and food and, all of that just to kind of like see a couple of keynotes that I really want to see. I'm going to think twice before I do that now in future when it comes to events. And obviously, the number one thing I would say about events businesses is, generally speaking, their biggest attraction is the in-person networking. Right? So like you can pretty much watch any keynote. Most events like record their kind of talks and put them online. The key thing that you want from like going to an event is the atmosphere, it's the networking, it's who you're sitting next to, it's that. So VR and 360 can absolutely add like so much to that, and will, I think, be a big part going forward. But currently, during this time, events companies are probably being hit the worst. Like, out of all of the influencers that I follow in the business space, the majority of them make a lot of their income from speaking gigs, and all of that has been wiped out. I mean, I usually speak at least one kind of event a month, and I haven't spoken at an event in person since January, and I've only done 2 like online events, like webinar events, and so absolutely event companies and in person like retail, hospitality, they are suffering right now. Now, that's not to say that you won't be able to kind of win work with those kind of clients, but what I would suggest is we need to kind of like scale back and really look at who your clients should be right now and who you should be going after. Because when you lead with empathy and when you put yourself in that potential client's shoes, right now, if someone came to me and said, okay, I run a VR company, and I know that your like events business has really suffered. So what I'm offering is this solution of like 360, like kind of like tours or recordings, and like you could have like this kind of like virtual event. The first thing that events person's going to do is think, okay, firstly, this is something that I don't know anything about, and it's going to take a lot of what's the word when it's like a steep learning curve for them. Ultimately, what they want to do is events companies, usually, I think in general, I don't know them inside out, but I think they make a lot of their money from the money they make from like the exhibitors, but then also the ticket price from the audience. And the reason the audience pay that ticket price is because they're getting, this kind of like value of like getting access to all these speakers and also access to these kind of exhibitors and everything like that. So from that point of view, what does 360 offer to an events company that a Zoom kind of event couldn't right now? It's a lot more expensive. It's a much higher learning curve for them. And when they've got 1,000,001 things running through their head and they're having to quickly pivot their company away from a physical location to online, I don't think there's many clients or people that you're reaching out to that would be in the right frame of mind to think, do you know what? I'm going to invest in the future of my company, because this is what they should be doing realistically. I'm going to think, not a year into the future, but I'm going to think 10 years into the future, maybe even 5 years into the future, when VR and mixed reality glasses are a lot more commonplace, and I can be ahead of the curve, and I can I can start building right now. I can have this innovative solution for my events going forward, so that I'm offering a more immersive experience for people that can't attend in person. That's the kind of attitude that you want the client to have. That's the kind of messaging that maybe if you are going to go after those clients, that's your kind of messaging. But realistically, right now, if I'm the owner of an events company, all I'm thinking is, how am I going to keep the lights on? How am I going to feed my family? I've literally lost millions or hundreds of thousands in revenue. I have no idea when my business can operate again. I need something, and I need it quick. And something like Zoom or an online event offers that, and it's cheap and it's easy to facilitate. It's proven. And so these are all the reasons why I would say that right now, that's not necessarily the right client. Now, when it comes to finding the right client, I feel like that was a long ramble about why maybe that's the wrong kind of thing. But I want to offer advice about how you go about finding the right kind of client, especially during this climate, but also in general. So the thing with 360 and VR is for kind of for corporate purposes. So I'm not talking about VR entertainment here. Obviously, I'm assuming if you're listening to this episode, you've kind of guessed that this is more like a commercial kind of topic. But generally speaking, there are 3 reasons any business buys anything, okay? Number 1, it makes them more money. Number 2, it saves them a lot of time, which in turn probably saves them money. Or it acts as a marketing tool that's going to generate more awareness and essentially get more people into their kind of ecosystem to potentially make a sale. So when you boil that down, if you think of it like, I really, really hate that funnels have become synonymous with, this kind of like click funnel culture. And if you know about that, then you know it has a particular kind of reputation. But if you think of like, the reason it's called a funnel is because that's like probably the most accurate image in your head that you can think about. But if you think about the funnel and you're like a little goblin at the at the bottom, like waiting to catch anything that kind of comes through and bring them into your business. If you think like the very top of that funnel, the idea is to get people into it. How do you get people into it? Well, you have to do your marketing. This is where your outreach, this is, you kind of like emailing people, messaging people on LinkedIn, socializing in Facebook groups. This is the bit where you need to get people aware of you and aware of your products and services. Once they're in the funnel, then they already know who you are. They already know what you do. Now you need to convert them. You need to make them want your product, right? They need to understand, like, they need to kind of know why they should invest in your product or service. Like, what's it going to do for them? And then obviously at the bottom, they kind of like, they fall into your business, and then it's all about retention. Like, what is the product good? Is your service good? Is what you're offering top notch and it's doing the job that you've said it was going to do? And that's the kind of like the very basics, and it's the big kind of the big picture, but the basics of like all sales and marketing. And this funnel, it reoccurs throughout everything. But if you think of it from the point of view of your personal marketing towards a new client, say for example, I'll use the events company example, but like I say, now might not be the right time to go after events companies. You're more likely going to get more success from industries that have a bit more trust in the technology of 360 right now, which is most likely going to be real estate, travel and tourism, any industry that already has a little bit of a kind of a buy-in on things like virtual tours already, like museums and galleries, like places that kind of need people to want to go to those places. And it's like an enticing kind of way to bring new people in. And I can't remember whether I've already said this, but if you haven't listened to my not latest episode, but one of the recent COVID podcasts that I did with Ben Claremont, he goes into a lot of in-depth discussion about why now is the right time to be building a virtual tour business, and all of the opportunity that he sees in that. So definitely check that episode out if you haven't already. So where was I? Who knows? By the end of this 31 days, maybe I won't even be rambling. Maybe I'll be so concise, but somehow I doubt it. Okay, so we were talking about the funnel. So let me use the example of I'm going after an events company client. Okay, so this is what generally most people's messaging sounds like. So I'm a virtual tour provider. So I like email the company, or I call them, or I get in touch with them somehow. And most people's messaging is, hey, I'm so sorry to hear that your business has been completely demolished by COVID. Absolutely sucks. I make virtual tours, and virtual tours can basically allow you to kind of do your events completely remotely, and it offers a way to have quite an immersive events experience without actually people needing to be there. Does that sound interesting to you? And their answer is either deadly silence or no, that doesn't sound interesting to me right now. Now, there's nothing necessarily, I mean, that sounded pretty good, right? Like, there's nothing really that wrong with that messaging from our point of view, right? I mean, that I've kind of said, like, that virtual tour would be really good. I've kind of outlined. But the thing is, I've led with messaging all about me. I've led with being in my own shoes, and what I really need to do when I'm looking for the right kind of client, when I'm kind of trying to reach out to a new client, when I'm figuring out whether or not they are a good person to go after, what I need to do is put myself in their shoes. So now let me try that again, thinking with that kind of through that lens, and also kind of referring back to what I said earlier about the 3 reasons why someone might kind of want 360 or VR services. So maybe this goes a little bit something like this, off the top of my head, something like this. Hi, so-and-so events. I've been watching your content that you've been putting out online. I'm so sorry to see that you're having like a difficult time. Like it's really been quite hard on a lot of the location-based services. I wanted to reach out to make sure to make sure that you were aware of this new kind of technology that allows you to generate more awareness and convert more people at your events and actually engage people more. So kind of hitting on generating more awareness, converting more sales, and saving them. Well, I haven't really touched on saving time and money, but let's focus on the first 2. So I wanted to make sure that that you were aware of this new technology that other events companies are using, which is this idea of like a virtual event. I found that with other clients, virtual tours or virtual events can actually offer up to 3 times more engagement than just traditional videos and photos of an event online. And what that tends to do is boost retention of those audience members for the next event, increasing people's events ticket sales or even pre-sales. I'd be super happy to jump on a call to talk you through how it works. I know that sometimes new technology sounds a bit scary, and I appreciate that during this time, you probably don't have a lot of free time and you're looking for something that can save you time and money as quickly as possible. And I'd be super happy to jump on a call with you just to talk you through like how the technology works. Would that be of interest to you? And then maybe you would say like, I'm free, next Tuesday or next Wednesday. If either of those work for you, let me know. So do you see what I did there? So that wasn't obviously the most concise version. I would probably want to work on that to make it a lot smaller, because again, the idea is that you are trying to keep it as concise as possible, because I know personally when I see a long email come into my inbox, I just don't even really read it. I leave it as unread, and I just think I need to wait until I'm in a kind of space where I've got 10 minutes to digest that email and reply to it before I'm even going to look at it. So you need to make that a lot shorter, but just the very principle is what I'm touching on there. Do you see what I did there? Do you see that I switched the script? So now I'm no longer talking about virtual tours and how, they're immersive and they do this. No. I'm using sales language on the client. The client needs to hear what the value of virtual tour is for their business. So if you're going after like real estate, they're quite an easy one, right? Because currently it's quite difficult for people are scared to like go to open houses or go to viewings. And actually, if we weren't in COVID times, even if you did go to an open house, how many of those people are actually quite serious about kind of like buying that house? Like probably not many people. So the messaging for reaching out to a client like a real estate agent might be something similar, but along the lines of, and it always open with kind of like, I'll probably go into this in a different episode about like kind of cold opens and cold emails and stuff, because if there's one thing that I've perfected over the years, it's the art of art of cold emails. But always start with something like that shows that you're not just sending a template blanket email. Anytime I get an email in my inbox that is so obviously just a template that someone's copied and pasted to about 50 different addresses, I just delete it. I don't even bother looking at it, because often it's just about like SEO or websites or whatever. But actually, if they've taken the time to like make the opening personal and really show that they've, like, for example, I had someone reach out recently, and this was a kind of, I mean, it's a template in the way that what they were saying was not necessarily super, super personal, but they opened by saying, "Hey, Alex, I've been looking at working with VR professionals and I came across your TED Talk. Absolutely loved the bit when you talked about XYZ. Just wanted to reach out and see if you needed any help with blah, blah, blah." And I thought even that opening of the fact that they'd very clearly found my talk and they'd very clearly taken the time to watch it because they were referencing a bit in it. Just even seeing that made me more likely to read the whole email, you know? So that's the aim of the game here. The aim of the game is to like get them to read the email, to become aware of you. Because again, we're working, when you email someone, when you're trying to find a client, you're working on that kind of like that top of the funnel type stuff. So when you want to reach out to like a real estate agent or something like that, like maybe the messaging is more around how you're going to help them either convert more sales. So for example, that might be that I'm sure there's stats about this online, but someone who looks at a virtual tour of a house versus just traditional flat photos are 3 times or some number times more likely to want to have a serious viewing, and are more likely to be a kind of a much further along, like a qualified lead, they call them, is when you're kind of like someone that's, you're a bit further down someone's funnel and you're most likely going to buy. So there's kind of stats like that you could use to your advantage. Like, did you know that, virtual tours compared to them can generate more qualified leads, or can convert more sales, or you could go for the angle. I wouldn't try and do all 3 in one email, but maybe like focus on like one of them, because the save time and money thing could also be like, instead of do you want to save more time and money by doing a virtual tour of a property rather than having to pay a salary for an employee to go out to a house and spend the money on the mileage and the expenses that come with that? Wouldn't you rather, get people to see the property virtually and then offer like an in-person viewing if they are serious? The other element of virtual tours, because obviously there's so many companies that could benefit from that, especially right now. Another big one is when the world starts opening up again. There are stats around the fact that companies that have 360 photos attached to their Google what do you call them, like Google profiles? No, when you like type a business into Google and it's listed on Google itself, it's not the website, it's like listed as a Google business. If a business has 360 photos of the inside of that, so for example, if you're a cafe and you have 360 photos of all of the inside, you will rank higher on Google. Google will put your business listing ahead of all the other cafes. If I searched cafes in Leicester, if you had 360 photos combined with some good reviews, you'd probably be listed first over another listing that didn't have 360 photos. So again, that is a really powerful thing to say to someone if you're trying to get their business, by saying, did you know? Maybe it's I'm sure that you get a lot of your footfall or your customers from people that Google cafes in the area. I just wanted to let you know that listings, I've noticed you've not got any 360 photos on your listings. Did you know that listings with 360 photos on average list 80% higher, or whatever the statistic is? You can find that by Googling it, higher than other listings. what would it mean to your business if you could get an extra 4 customers a day? And to a cafe, like, that's huge. So again, this is just like a lot of rambling and a lot of different ideas I'm throwing at you. But ultimately what I'm saying is when you're looking for the right kind of client to work with, a big factor is it actually right for them and their business? You have to put yourself in their shoes. Can they make money? Ultimately, that's all a business is. A business just makes money. That's why it's a business. So can your product, can your 360 services, or can your VR services make that client money? That's basically what you need to decide. And you need to remove your own personal prejudice from the equation, and you need to put yourself in their shoes, think it through from their position, and make it so easy for them to say yes, because there are so many upsides of using you and your services. So yeah, I mean, wow, we've covered a lot there. And I realise I've focused a lot on virtual tours. That's purely because the question itself came from someone who was offering virtual tours to events companies. So that's why I focused on that. And also, I'm sure a lot of you listening who are wanting to kind of jump in, and this is your first foray into kind of the world of business for yourself. Virtual tours, especially if you're a 360 kind of creator, virtual tours are just the easiest hanging fruit. They are the easiest to sell in because they don't require the steep learning curve that VR does. If you're going after someone for VR work, finding the right client for that, and again, that's going to vary and not necessarily going to be the same right now. Because of the pandemic and people's focuses are elsewhere. But generally speaking, the reason why 360 or VR training is so well received in companies is because they can save a lot of time and money, and ultimately it saves them a lot of money down the kind of road if their employees are trained well. And there's been loads of studies around the fact that VR training outperforms traditional training and e-learning by miles. PwC actually, who are a lovely client of mine, they've just released a report about, in fact, looking at some of the projects that we've done together and comparing it to traditional classroom learning and e-learning. And they've found some really interesting stats around that. And don't be scared to use those stats. Use those stats in your marketing. Put them in your armory so that when you're kind of having these conversations with clients, again, you can have these stats at the ready to tell them why. Because ultimately, the only reason you're kind of selling them a virtual tour in the first place is because you genuinely believe that it's going to help their company. And if you can lead with that, and if you can always start with that, that's just going to take you miles. So I guess I've not really talked specifically about finding the right particular client in very specific terms, but that's purely because that's going to differ person to person. And actually, arguably, anyone could be the right client, but the number one reason to know if they're the right client right now is if you think that your service can make them money, because that's all they're interested in right now, especially during these times. And again, if you've got any follow-up questions that I can answer in later episodes this month, then please send them to me, because I'm sure that potentially this episode has had a bit of a light bulb moment for a lot of you, thinking, oh wow, I would hazard to guess that 50% of you listening to this are now going to think about the emails that you've sent clients and gone, ah, shit, yeah, that's why that didn't work. Because it's hello, do you need a virtual tour? Virtual tours are brilliant. It's well, of course you're going to say that. You're the person trying to sell a virtual tour. So again, put yourself in their shoes. Finding the right client right now is all about thinking about what clients can benefit the most. Can you make them more money by generating more awareness for their company? Can you convert more sales? So with the Google listing example, that's converting more sales, right? That's generating more awareness and converting more sales. With real estate, that's converting more sales if you've got a really good virtual tour that makes people more interested in seeing the property. That's converting more sales. That's making that company more money. Or can you save them time and money? You know, is investing in a VR training package going to save me money down the road because Jimmy doesn't, you know, trip over a hazard in the office and sue me because I've given him the correct training and he's totally kind of like been immersed in it and going forward. In fact, that's a funny story to tell. Not funny, but one of pre-VR, this is when I was working in more traditional kind of video and film work. Just literally as I was getting into VR, I was doing like agency work to kind of pay the bills. And I mean, when I'm talking agencies, by the way, I'm talking creative agencies, because I know that agencies can mean lots of different things in lots of different industries. But we were targeting a particular client with this kind of like big, elaborate, like film kind of training series, like campaign. And they signed it off like without even really thinking about it. And it was like a lot of money for this series of training kind of like films. And the reason being that the way that the person had pitched it, which is kind of how I started to kind of understand a lot of this, was they said, when you have to shut down your whole manufacturing process because someone, accidentally gets that thing stuck in that machine, and that happens how many times a month? Maybe 2-3 times. And how much does that cost your business every time that machine gets shut down? And the owner of the business was like, well, it costs about 40 grand every time in lost sales because of the time that it takes to get that machine up and running. They said, well, 40 grand, if that's happening a few times a week or a few times a day or whatever it is, how many hundreds of thousands are you losing every month? You could pay for our kind of training series, for however many thousand it was, and you'll have made that money back within the first month. And they just signed right away. They didn't really even ask that many questions. They were like, well, yeah, who wouldn't take that deal? Because that's saving me so much time and money in all of this lost revenue because this particular machine wasn't being handled correctly. So that's like just a really classic example of like saving time and money. So key takeaways: look at the emails that you've been sending people and have a good hard talk to yourself in the mirror about whether or not you've been a selfish asshole and haven't been putting yourself in your potential client's shoes. That's number one. Number two, pick one of those three messagings or one of those three reasons why a client might benefit from your products and services. So it's either generating awareness, converting sales, or saving time and money. And then what I want you to do is I want you to do a bit of, if you're in a place where you want to get that first client, and you have some virtual tours or some kind of examples of your work as a portfolio already, because that's such a key part. You can't go out and just pitch clients if you don't have any work. We'll probably talk about that in a different episode. But if you've got proof of like the work that you've done, I want you to pick an industry and really think about which industries would be most benefiting right now from virtual tours. I want you to craft an email that is along the lines of what I've talked about in this episode. And I want you to send at least 10 of those kind of emails and just see what happens. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that anything will happen. I'm not guaranteeing that people will even reply because, again, we are living through weird times where people are, really busy or they've got a million one fires to put out. They might not necessarily respond straight away. But I promise you that when someone does respond, even if it's not the right time for them because they can't afford it or their marketing budgets have been slashed or whatever the reason might be, they're going to be so much more receptive. You're probably going to have a much higher open rate of your emails. People are probably going to digest the information a lot more because you've taken the time to really think through whether or not you can actually help them in their business, and that's all you're doing. Okay, I'm going to end the episode here. Thank you so much for that question. That was really, really great. And for all of you who have had rejections during this time and you're losing clients and you're struggling and you're trying to reach out to new people, hang on in there. Please don't be disheartened. Maybe think about what other skill sets you have and what other things you can offer that can, because this obviously, I've talked about it in relation to 360, but this translates across any kind of creative service, whether you're a graphic designer or a video creator or podcaster, whatever, like, you know, there is scope to use this exact kind of method and apply it to any creative service, because ultimately all any business wants to do is make money, and all you need to do is find out how you can make a business money. So yeah, hope that helps. And if you liked this episode, please reach out to me. I would love to hear your feedback. Again, if you want reminding of the episodes coming out, just sign up to the newsletter at alexmakesvr.com. Reach out to me on the socials to send me questions, Alex Makes VR across all the socials, or if you've got a long ass question, which I welcome, send it over to alexmakesvr@gmail.com. Wow, that was a lot of talking. I'm gonna have a cup of tea. I'll see you tomorrow.